Hey, welcome back to the Community Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Welsh. This is episode 17, and today, Dr. Guy Gross with New Horizon Dental. We're going to talk a little bit about how he arrived in to be a dentist, what he's been doing in the community, and most importantly, the behind the scenes of the yard downtown and what youth sports means to Dr. Guy Gross. Enjoy the interview. Let's talk to my good friend, Dr. Guy. So welcome, Guy, to the Community Leader Podcast. I guess I should call you Dr. Gross.
Yeah,
So, I don't know whether to call you Dr. Guy Gross, Guy.
yeah, at work I go by Dr. Guy.
Dr. Guy.
Dr. Kate is also there.
I do remember that.
yeah.
As Dr.
Yeah.
Guy. So we're going to talk
Yeah.
about that as Dr. Guy. So
Yeah.
anyway, welcome to the Community Leader Podcast. Honored to
you.
have you on. When we were putting this together, obviously you were one of the guys that I truly wanted to interview. We're going to talk about that later on. Not only what you've done in this community, but I really want to learn about, I watched all your stuff on Facebook, and you do some amazing stuff and travel around, and you coach and teach people on dental practice of what you know. I guess we should let the viewers know right away that you're New Horizon Dental Care.
Yes.
You started and founded that. You actually kind of bought the business maybe from Kate's dad.
Yes.
And then you guys
Dr.
just
Ken Guest.
exploded it. I mean, he had a phenomenal practice, but you guys exploded it. So
Yeah.
before we get into that, though, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you're from, and then what your current family looks like now.
Yeah. So I've been in, my wife Kate and I, we moved back to Salina 21 years ago, a little over 21 years. And that was right out of dental school, came in and started practicing here, been doing it ever since. We now have 3 kids that are all 3 in high school, which is kind of crazy world. We're got our first senior and our last freshman. So that's all happening right now. And, but we're still working and practicing dentistry. I do my practice has become more and more specialized to where I focus mostly on cosmetic dentistry and dental implants and just sort of reconstructive type work. So that's my niche. At the same time, I do spend a lot of my time mentoring and teaching. That's actually, I probably spend about half my time doing that and working with other doctors from all over and trying to help them improve what they do. And that's kind of been the gist as we grew our company and kind of grew our footprint from not just being our one practice in Salina to a big group that we work with now.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later because I am super intrigued. It's a little bit of community leaders is what we talk about. But given my background, I like to know about entrepreneurship and how everything gets started. And watching what you and Kate have built over the last 20 years, pretty phenomenal. And I bet I know a quarter of it. Like what I see on Ohio Street isn't even what you guys really do. And I've watched you over the years train and fly and put on classes and be a coach and a mentor to people. And we'll see if we can touch on that a little bit more. But let's get to know you and what you've done in the community. And first thing I'm going to start a little bit about getting to know you is, so let's go back to when you were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Where were you at? Where did you grow up?
Yeah. So I was a Bennington, Kansas kid, a Bennington Bulldog, and came out of a class of 23 kids there in Bennington. It was actually a much smaller school back then. And so, spent my summers working for a farmer and, literally all the stuff leading up to harvest, go through harvest. And then after that, it was all day up till dark every day, working the fields to get them ready for the next harvest. And that was our summers, other than that, playing baseball. I've always been really into sports, which I think, in high school is football, basketball, track, baseball, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that sort of spurred me on to a lot of what I do as kind of my hobbies now, which is coaching kids and things like that. So, it all started back in good old B-Town.
But so your parents, I remember where your parents lived in the, I want to say the log cabin, but is that where you grew up? Would that be your childhood home?
From 3rd grade on.
Okay.
They moved out there, and for whatever reason, they, instead of they were maybe halfway between Salina and Bennington, and instead of sending us into Salina, they sent us up to Bennington, and that's I didn't have any part of that decision.
Yeah.
It's just what they did.
So looking back now, it has nothing to do with community leaders, but I just want to know, it's interesting. Looking back, Do you think if somebody had the choice of sending their, because you're big involved in Central right now, your kids all go to Central, you get to see, we were talking right before the podcast that your son was the quarterback and he got injured and you're just coming back from a leg.
Yeah, literally last night just got home from being down getting surgery with a guy that's a super specialized foot and ankle only surgeon, and so he fixed him up last night.
So what do you see then the difference between Bennington and Central? Like, I know it may be hard to say when they're, but do you wish you would have went to Central and had a bigger 5A class, or did you like growing up in Bennington and being able to play all those sports, or did you play a lot of sports in Salina?
We really didn't. The one thing that I've noticed is in general, when you're in Salina and, you start to get into the bigger cities, there's just more resources around what can be offered. And I think that now the world has shrunk to where even the Bennington kids get access to more things than we probably got back then. I would say, I'm always just sort of a person that's like, be all in right where you're planted and do your thing. And that's just, the benefits of being in a small school was that they needed me on the basketball team. They wouldn't have needed me at Central, right?
Right.
And they probably didn't need me at Bennington either, if we're being real honest. I was a pretty good football and baseball player. Basketball didn't need me.
But when there were only 8 guys going out, you were like, I'm a shoe-in.
So I was able to be in the play. I was in Stuco. I was on Scholars Bowl team all 4 years, Science Olympiad. I was able to do literally like everything, where I think at Central you get a little more specialized because it's such a commitment. So I think there was benefits. I was so used to managing long hours and full schedule coming out of high school that, really there wasn't any challenge that I didn't feel like I could take on. So I think Bennington prepared me really well. On the other hand, I see what my kids are getting at Central, and I think it's amazing too. And again, it's just about being committed and all in to whatever it is that you're doing, and learning the habits of hard work and work ethic and, diligence, learning to adapt to and be willing to deal with things that are hard and, just go through it. I think that's good for every kid to learn,
It's interesting you say you grew up working for other people on the farm, because your dad, great guy. Everybody respected him from the K-State flying, big pilot. Was he always a pilot?
Yeah, well, not always. He actually has his background was in agriculture education, and then he got a master's in like animal science. So, but he was doing his aviation stuff along the side of that the whole way through. And so he initially worked for Farmland Industries, and then eventually he kept flying more and more and became an examiner, and then he was a charter pilot, and eventually he was chief pilot. That's what brought him to Salina. Charlie Stevens hired him to be the chief pilot out at Aircraft Services in Salina. That's what caused my parents to move here. And so that's really and so then he just kept doing that alongside of his other career. My dad was a tireless worker. Like 7 days a week was not enough for him, so he kept going. And then eventually the K-State merger with Kansas College of Technology occurred, and he was working at Kansas College of Technology and helped facilitate that merger. And then, the birth of really what has become the aviation program at K-State Salina started to occur, which has been nothing short of amazing.
Exactly.
Really.
And again, I didn't know that's where this is going to go, but I respect your father so much that if he was still with us, he would be in that seat.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he would be a guy that I'd want to interview as a community leader, because you can't travel. I was on a flight one time and somebody asked me where I was from, and I said, Salina, Kansas. I said, do you know Bill Gross? And I'm like, he's like, he was my flight instructor.
Yeah.
And this guy was in a jump seat flying from one place to the other, and he had trained underneath your father. And it just, again, everybody I run into had great respect. But really, where I'm leading into that, other than a great man, is why didn't you go into aviation then? Why dentistry? Knowing that he's got that much aviation, did you never have that calling? Did you ever try and take flight lessons? Or
I did actually. Got my private license.
I didn't know
literally, that. I think the rules were you could solo fly when you were 16. You could get your check ride and get your license as soon as you turned 17. So I literally did both of those things on my birthdays. Got my license. I flew with my dad several times throughout college and all that. in fact, I would go with him on some of the trips where he was flying, coaches from K-State to recruit and things like that. I'd fly as the co-pilot, but I just never really kept going on it. And I kind of had this science thing in my head, and I got the bug that I wanted to be in healthcare, and I really set off on the path to go to med school. And it wasn't until I met Ken Guest that I had ever even considered dentistry. And then I started to realize.
Did you meet Ken because of Kate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Kate and I started dating.
I didn't know if you knew Ken, and then you found out he had an attractive daughter,
No.
and then all of a sudden it became super exciting for you to be in there.
No, that's we were both going to K-State Salina one summer. We were both taking some classes out there in the summer terms in college, and she and I ended up being partners in the physics lab, and so that's how we met. And then
I'm sure that was just by chance too. You didn't try and weasel your way into that.
I don't remember if I was strategic about that or not, but either way, I felt like I got kind of lucky on that one.
Yeah.
And so we started dating one summer, and she was going to KU, I was going to K-State. It was kind of like, oh man, I don't know. I don't want to have a long distance relationship. But by the end of the summer, it was like, all right, we're in. We're going. So
long distance. What's that? An hour?
Yeah,
hour
and a half. It felt like a long ways back then. Yeah.
I get it.
But that's how I met Ken. He talked me into coming in and hanging out with him one day at the office. I had spent that whole summer doing an internship with Dr. Elaine Ferguson and several of the other docs at ComCare and at the hospital, really focusing on medicine, and then I meet Ken, and so I literally started considering dentistry, and so I was like, I'm going to keep my options open. I went all the way through college, did the admissions test for both medicine and dentistry, and did the whole interview process. And literally the day before I walked across the stage at K-State, I made the decision, and I called and got my deposits back from med school and decided to go to dental, and I've never looked back since.
See, that's why I love doing these. I would have never have known that. Like I've already learned that you have your pilot's license. I didn't know that because I was always wondered how that would, why you didn't choose that given your dad's background of aviation. Two, I'm mostly surprised that Kate met you and she's still with you through the school that's there.
Very fair.
If you know Kate,
yeah, very fair.
Phenomenal woman. But that you were going to be a doctor. That you thought about going down medicine, and then you went into dental, because honestly, I think it's a calling for you. Like, again, I know some of the people watching this won't know everything that I've watched you do. And again, it's not like I stalk you, but what you provide to the new dentists that are trying to get in, and the specialized stuff, and the commitment that you've given to give back to those new dentists and all that. Talk about that a little bit on there. And I know I'm trying to figure in we're going to get to the yard, and we're going to get to the everything you do in the community here, but and you said it before we got started, such a big part of the philanthropy that you're able to do now came from the work you were able to do in coaching other dentists and people who thought they wanted to get a dental. Tell me a snippet a little bit about what you've been doing in the last 10 years to help support new dentists who want to get in, because I know you've been doing some phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing?
So as I was growing and evolving, doing what we do in Salina, there came this point of, continuing to realize that we had a lot of people asking for ways to, hey, how can I learn that? How can I do that? And so it sort of naturally and organically became this opportunity to start to work with people outside of Salina. And so we really built a company of dental practices that, spanned into Missouri and Oklahoma. And now we're aligned with a group that spans across the whole country, really. And so in that period of time, I was helping doctors learn to do the procedures that patients need that they don't necessarily get as much specialized training on in dental school. So that includes things like cosmetic dentistry, dental implants being a huge one. Like that's probably where I've done the vast majority of my teaching over the last 10 years is on surgical concepts, techniques, helping reconstruct teeth or full sets of teeth, whatever it might be. And then all of even everything that goes into that, including like leadership, management skills, the verbal skills. I mean, all the stuff that helps doctors to create a better patient experience. You know, we've sort of delved into all of that, and part of it is, you know, just because we were learning what was working and trying, you know, constantly trying to get better at that, and then it gave us the opportunity to share it with people all across the country and beyond, really, in many ways. So that's kind of been the gist of it. And 100%, I mean, I give that, just the hard work and the opportunity that created is really what allows us to be able to do any amount of, you know, fun community projects that do things to, you know, we just look at it. What can we do that's going to do good for the community, not only right now, not only just for our kids, but like we're talking decades and beyond to come, that hopefully, you know, change the landscape for some Salina kids.
Yeah. Let's talk about, I'm going to know if I'm going to say it correctly on there. Is it Smiles for Life? Is that what you guys were doing for everyone? Smiles for Life? And all of those proceeds were donated back. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
100%.
where did that go to?
So, you know, over the years, we've used our whitening programs. That's what Smiles for Life was. Anytime we were whitening smiles, we were giving 100% of the proceeds for at least a quarter or more, or a third of the year. We would usually go March through end of June, and any whitening that we did in that period of time, the 100% of the proceeds would go to something that benefited kids. So Ambucks has been the benefactor of that. You know, we've partnered with multiple charities over the years for that. We've done a lot of our outreach programs. So where we go and serve in other countries, we've used money to go and take care of kids in Guatemala and Dominican Republic and Venezuela, and quite a few trips that we've done on that. And so that's the way we've used Smiles for Life as a way to kind of catapult into doing more good, you know. So when it was Ambucks, we used it to buy Amtraks for kids.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
We were in Ambucks together for a while.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, for a long
That's
time.
probably where we first met.
I'm sure.
Somewhere along it. Well, actually, Todd helped me buy my first house.
Yeah.
When we moved to town. That's right.
We have funny stories about that.
Oh gosh, some very funny stories. Yeah.
I still remember I'm going to tell the funniest story that you keep reminding all the time. So you may remember this one. I don't know if you will, but where the Jim Strawn.
Yes.
You know the story I'm going with on there? It's like Jim Strawn meets, and so I'm bringing the two new docs to town, and I'm, you know, strutting them around or whatever, and we come up to look at this brand new construction, and he's like, I'm like, well, this is Jim, you know, Jim Strawn, whichever. He's like, oh, you know my good friend Ted. Yeah. And so he called me Ted Welsh. You know Ted Welsh, don't you? Yeah. And you remind me of that story every time, because it was like, hey, I want to introduce to my good friend Jim Strawn. Him and I are, you know, good, whatever.
Yeah, we're really close.
We're really close. We're really close and tight. Yeah. He's like, you know my friend Ted Welsh.
Ted Welch. Yeah. So yeah, whenever I get a chance, I call Todd Ted Welch. So.
Always a good story.
Because we're tight.
That's right. It goes back a long way.
It does go back. That's
a long time.
Before the 21-year clock started, you know, but we were moving to town.
Let's talk about, again, we may have to cut this part out, whether you want to talk about it or not, but it's intriguing to me, is the building that you bought. What was the reasoning for the big building that you purchased and then sold, which is now CompCare?
Oh.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
So.
Because, again, it's neat stuff that you're doing in town. Like, you had to have I don't think you bought that as an investment. My thought was, I heard in town was that's where you were going to open up your big training and coaching program. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly right. The plan had been that when the bank moved out of there, which was Bennington State Bank,
Was it Bennington? I thought it was First National or Sunflower.
Or yeah, I'm sorry, it was Sunflower.
Sunflower Bank.
My fault. Yeah, Sunflower. Gosh.
So for those who are thinking,
that part out.
Yeah, exactly. So for those who are knowing, it's going to be across from Bennington State Bank, which is now CompCare.
Yeah. So the new
used to be a bank.
CompCare building there at like Ohio and Belmont.
Right.
We had plans to turn that into a really multi-specialty dental clinic that was going to take care of people, and have space for education and training and teaching and all of that as we grew our company. And so that was the plan. And, as we started getting into that and realizing how much there was a lot of stuff going on that was going to cost way more in that building to get it where we wanted it than I felt like made sense to put too many eggs in that one basket. And so we made the commitment to at that time to press pause on that project and just continue to grow our footprint outside of Salina, so that then we could ultimately revisit that project later. We just decided it didn't make as much sense as what we had hoped based on the overall cost and scope of the project.
Well, again, and I only bring that up, and I may have startled you by not knowing that's what we're going to talk about. But again, I'm hoping that there are entrepreneurs who watch this show and they realize that they can look at your success and go, gosh, that must have been easy for him, or what was it? But I love to watch the growth and what people's mindset. You took a chance. You bought that building. And it's okay sometimes. I know even in my career, and I love hearing the stories about yours, where you take off on a path and then you do enough due diligence later on to say, okay, that's not the path I need to be. And so it's okay to back out of what you're doing and reset.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you guys did. And you came out okay on the building.
Yeah. Thank gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, thank goodness I was, so to the entrepreneurs out there, there was some sleepless nights over that one, some heartburn, and I'm grateful that the hospital saw the opportunity there and took it. And I mean, man, they did so much more with that property than I could have done at that time, and so I think it turned out to be an amazing blessing. Well, not only for me, but especially for the community to have that kind of a clinic being built. It's really phenomenal. So that's super cool. But yes, scary times sometimes as an entrepreneur. And I started realizing that, that was the opportunity I felt like, if I got too many eggs in that basket, it was going to be the stuck on the hamster wheel where I'm, everything is riding on this one thing too much. And I didn't like that feel. And so, I backed out of it, and thankfully it worked out okay.
Yeah.
So,
cool. Okay. Well, let's, I want people to know before we go into some cool stuff that you're doing that isn't, we're going to talk about the yard. I want to know how that all came about, because that's a phenomenal project. But I don't want to, as being a community leader podcast, I just want people to know what you and Kate have done for this community over 20 years. I mean, every auction that I go to, you guys have donated something. Mm-hmm. I've watched some free dental care you've given to people over the years who couldn't afford something. Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't a promotion for you to walk in and ask for free dental care. But, you guys have big hearts, and you've done some amazing stuff for the community. And I just want people to be aware of what you guys have done, because you've got this building on South Ohio Street, but you're so much bigger than the building on South Ohio Street. And I don't think people realize what you and Kate have done outside of that. And then you brought Scott in, and Scott was helping you, which is Kate's brother. And what I've learned from interviewing great entrepreneurial people is you start to surround yourself with a team. And Scott was a big part of your team.
Yes.
And running the training and coaching, I think, is what he was doing.
Really, he was overseeing the operations of our management company that we built, which was the management company was the backbone business operations team for all the dental practices that we had around this part of the country. So our goal was to make it so that dentists could go in and do what they do best, which is take care of patients and do procedures, and not have to worry about HR and accounting and finance and taxes and marketing and all of that. So we tried to take that load off of them so they could and surround them with an amazing team so they could go in and do work and build practices that had great cultures, and that was the goal. Yeah.
Well, let's dive deeper into downtown Salina.
Yeah.
We were looking at this when
Yeah.
you
I love this picture.
when you
man.
came in. It's a
I
phenomenal
mean, this is
picture.
live.
Yeah. We're sitting on the street right
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Those cars are just stopped right
Yeah,
there.
they stopped for us.
But big piece of downtown Salina that you created is called The Yard.
Yeah.
And it goes back that you touched a little bit about you growing up in sports, and baseball was kind of one of your big passions of what you like to do. Tell me, let's go all the way back. I mean, it's nice to see the end product, but Medina Construction used to sit there. There was a couple other buildings and some stuff you had to tear down. Take me all the way back to what's the first birthing of that? Was it a phone call? Was it an idea? How'd you find that location? Take me all the way back to the very beginning of The Yard.
Oh man. So, I mean, the true beginnings of The Yard, it came from really as I was coaching youth sports and especially baseball. We're traveling around and we're seeing these kids from other communities that are being able to practice and work, get training, get coaching year round. We're losing and they're playing better baseball than us and softball and, all those kind of things. And so I was like, it isn't that our kids are less talented here. It's just they're not as trained and skilled yet because they're just not having the opportunities. And so that was what caused me to see the need. Then it literally, I mean, imagine this, Todd. You know how things, you've seen people do this over and over again. The scope creep happens. So I literally wanted like a Morton building.
Right.
Somewhere.
I figured this is where it was going. Like,
I just
you had an idea, and
give
then
me
it ends
a
up.
barn, please.
Yeah.
I mean, I just need is there any barn that's still got a couple of years left before it falls over? I mean, we could put a batting cage in there or whatever. It was we were looking at buildings. I looked at a lot of buildings over that time. Even looked at building a building somewhere, and but I had cross paths with Bill. I went down and looked at that property. Started sort of creating some vision for it. It was a much bigger project to take on that property, but I was like, it gives us a chance to build it, to start and maybe do it in segments. And by the time it was all said and done, I was just like, we're gonna just go and get this done. I don't want this. There's no reason to let it linger. So when I initially talked to Bill, we wanted to. I was interested in it. We couldn't quite get, lined up initially. So I think it may have sat for another 6 months or something, 4, 5, 6 months, and then we crossed paths again and started in on the project and got to a point where we were in agreement on the way we could do it and the pricing and all that. And so I'm grateful that worked out. And then it was, a lot of it, like I had support with a company called Mammoth Construction that helped me create renderings. I'm not as great at like seeing a space and going, oh, this is what we could do with that. So I had them help me like, okay, take the pictures of it all. And they put it into context of what it could look like. And that's what really got me excited.
Probably when you see that, you were like, wow,
okay,
yeah.
we could do some really cool stuff here. So we started playing around with how to utilize the space. And so that's where we tore down one of the buildings, which was actually an old lumberyard building that then also had like an office space on the side of it that Bill used. Some of that I hated to tear down, but other parts of it I was like, it just has to go, and so but it was really kind of an old equipment yard, a lot of grass and weeds and chain link fence, and it really wasn't real nice looking.
Right.
The front of the brick building that we have now had just some little steps there to a door. The building on the corner, which is now our bullpen building where our pitchers work out and stuff, was literally looking like it was about to fall over.
Yeah.
And
Well, I remember going through that when Bill had it for sale, and somebody had a whole bunch of decking. Mm-hmm. He was renting that out in there, and that building is elevated. And I was always like going, who in the world? Well, it's elevated because of the train track.
Yes.
They used to unload freight into that, and so it was dock high from there. Because I was like, why is that building so elevated?
Yeah, it's a depot building or whatever. And one of the things that we learned is that if we tore that building down, we couldn't build a new one in that same spot because it was sort of grandfathered in because it was already there as the depot building.
Probably so close to the corner.
It's right on the corner. Yeah. So we would have had to set it back. It would have changed the whole project quite a bit. So we took what we had and spruced it all up. And, I had a lot of help from Jake Wilson on all of this design, and figuring out how to do that. And so it turned into it's a pretty beautiful building. You walk in there, we actually, all the interior wood inside of that building is repurposed, 2x12s that we took out of the other building, the brick building. We put it over there, built the walls with that, cleaned them up, clear coated them. It looks really awesome, and then with the turf and that nice wood and then the black kind of it really is pretty cool building now.
It's amazing. You know what I mean? Like I was just thinking back because I remember what used to be there, and to have that vision for you to buy that, and to even think. But I think what's funny is like, like I don't even know that you knew that. Like it's turned out way better than you thought when you originally bought it.
When I first bought it, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I remember this quote from Charlie Walker way back then, and then Charlie and I are nowhere near being in the same chapter of any books. But Charlie, I remember him when he was building the zoo out there. I remember reading his quote in the paper. It said, "It only costs a little more to fly first class." I was like, man, it actually, now that I look at it, it costs quite a bit more. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I'm never going to regret doing it right.
Yeah.
So we tried to make sure that things looked nice, and we're working on some things to even improve the signage on the front of that, almost treating it like a mural on the front of that, if that all comes to fruition. We're working with the city a little bit on that right now, but we participated in the mural project there. So if you go out on the field, you can see it from the road, but if you haven't checked it out, I mean, go out on the field and see the murals that we did on it's the north side of our batting cage building. Is a brick building, and it's really, really cool. Turned out there's a lot of tributes to Salina built into there, including a purple airplane flying off into the sunset there. Cool. Yeah. So there's some really neat things there. Tributes to the high schools, the players that have come through here, like Pat Mears and others that have played here that their numbers are on the pennants there. And so it's really neat. And then there's another part of the mural that's all about, sayings that are kind of baseball jargon, if you will. And so,
you mentioned Charlie Walker's quote. We were talking about Chad Caston, who was my first interview that was here. And he has one of the best quotes that I remember is "Only cry once," meaning spend all the money.
Yeah.
And you're going to cry when you write the check. But the worst thing would be is if you wrote the check and then you got all done and you went, man, if we would have done this. And then later on, you tear down the stuff you did the first time and then you make it even better. And it's like now you're crying again and whichever. And so I learned that from him when it's like only cry once. It's like do the best you can and then maybe even a little better.
Yeah.
And you'll be okay. And I don't know how you improve what you did. You let the I'm assuming you let them do that. Whether they charged them, I'm not sure. But we were just there for the kickball tournament that the United Way put on.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was the first time that I got to experience inside all of the whole facility.
Yeah.
And man, when you get on that turf, it was done first class.
Yeah,
I mean,
isn't it cool? It feels totally different. Like to look at the field from the road. Yeah. Is totally different than how it feels when you're standing on the field.
Yeah.
I keep telling people that. I'm like, you got to go out there, check it out, you know, do the whole thing. Cause and I mean, I'll tell you, kickball has been a hit down there. It's fun. It is a fun game to play, and everybody can play kickball.
Yeah. Well, so, I don't know. I didn't play that well. But I may have pulled a hamstring first run to first base.
Some hammy problems, but it's a fun game, and so we've actually had quite a few times people have played kickball down there and just absolutely loved it. So, not everybody wants to swing a bat or try to hit a moving baseball, or a softball, but that's been a fun way to get people down there, and it's been a cool way for people to do some fundraisers and various things like that. So, I love it.
Again, it's just you and Kate giving back to the community. I mean, that's why you're on the show, is because I want people to be aware of that. I mean, it's the little things. And I say little, that's a big thing, but the little thing of being able to give back and allow people to do fundraisers at that event, and to allow certain organizations who maybe couldn't afford, or a child who couldn't afford some sort of a camp or whatever,
Yeah.
and they get put in that space and be able to do that. So those are the little things for our youth that I know is a big deal for you.
Yeah.
The yard, again, phenomenal project. I think you think of first the field house being built with Brian Richardson,
Amazing.
Pestinger and those guys putting the garage together, and then you guys being right next door at the yard, the hotel going up, everything that's going on, downtown. It really has made it. Now, I think if the river project goes through, and you guys
So
are
cool.
sitting real close to the river,
Yeah,
and if they do
yeah.
that little amphitheater, and then they redo those
Yeah.
buildings across the street from you, it can only,
Yeah, all
what's going to
that's-
happen is going to be amazing.
All that stuff to the south of the Iron Street Bridge, right there across from the community theater and all that. If that part of the river project goes through, that'll be possibly one of the coolest spots
Right.
in all of downtown. And I'm excited about that. I have this vision for like just these community gatherings and things that people be down there at the garage and the yard and the
Right.
river. And, I'm thinking about awesome food and music and things like that would be tons of fun, and it's really cool because I've gotten to know Trace Walker and Larry Brittigam through working with the downtown group, and Guy Walker and all these guys that have done such phenomenal work for so long to get this thing up and running. And even they were like, if you'd have told me that by 2020 to 2023 that we would have had 4th Street looking like it looks compared to what it, because it really was
You didn't want to go on 4th
a pretty
Street.
rundown, it's the street with the railroad tracks, and it was kind of, it was much more warehouse, type of street. And a little, just not a lot of updates had been done down there. And so now it's one of the gems of the downtown, which it's really neat to see that happen. And, when I think about you mentioned the opportunity to do good for the community and getting kids down to the yard, even though we tried to build this in a first class way, we've tried to keep it so that it's very affordable, and we try to make it even more affordable. Out in the front of the yard, as you walk in, there's a big area of bricks that are inlaid into the sidewalk. And what we've done over the years is we've been selling those bricks so families can do, put their name on a brick, or, you can do a tribute to somebody that you lost, or an old coach, or whatever it might be. But we're doing that as a way to raise money for scholarships for kids to attend camps, to get private lessons, or to get a membership at the yard so they can come down there and work out. Even though it's built in a first class way, my thing is, I was like, I don't want this to be like a country club for baseball and softball. I want it to be where everybody can go. It's not just like some exclusive deal that only, the upper class can use. I want it to be where everybody can use it. And our goal is to reach more kids. It's gotten, the way youth sports, it's gotten very expensive to be part of youth sports.
Yeah.
And so to me, that isn't, that doesn't favor everyone as well. And there's plenty of kids at every school that want to learn how to play sports. And so we've worked to try to make that be a continual thing. A lot of projects ongoing to continue to drive that. And biggest thing is a big shout out of gratitude to our community support that we've gotten, people that have bought those bricks, or, we had JRI Hospitality come in and basically become the sponsor of the field, which will help us offset a lot of the ongoing things that are going to be required to keep that field in top shape going forward over the next 10 years. So you can't be grateful enough for all the people. And we've had a bunch of others. Bennington State Bank help sponsor our youth league. We've had multiple companies. Their banners are all out there on the fences, kind of like an outfield fence at a baseball. But that kind of stuff is just phenomenal, that people have said, hey, how can we help
Yeah.
We want to support you guys. We'll help make it so that you can keep reaching out to more kids.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to ask you, I'll lead up with these 3 questions. You can answer them however you want. With the yard, so somebody who's watching this and they want to do a project like that, what's one thing you would have done different? What's one thing that surprised you that turned out? And then if you think about, if you watch this back in 10 years, what do you hope the legacy would be in 10 years of where the yard would be at 10 years from today? So start out with the first question of what would you do different?
Good question. If it's crazy to think, I really feel like with the space we had, we did really well with that. Like that, we maximized the heck out of that space. Yeah. If I could do something different, I would have more space. I really wish that I had that alley. Even if I just had the alley behind us, right, instead of there being an alley there, I could make the infield a little bit bigger. It's a little snug for our full size, like our high school and college, like Kansas Wesleyan teams are down there all the time. To put the bases at 90 feet and then to try to run the bases and make the turn, it's a little tight. Or for infielders to field, you're not able to go quite as deep as maybe you would be able to on a full. So it's a full size infield, but it's snug, yeah, full sized. So
and you probably would have never thought when you're again. Yeah. The initial thought was, think about that. You were looking for a barn.
It was overwhelming to think about how big we were building it as it was. Yeah. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, we wish we had more space.
Yeah. What surprised you the most about it?
I would say there hasn't been a ton of just crazy surprises. Probably the biggest thing that surprised me, we put the roof over the field, and we have the nets and everything. But what I didn't realize how much snow would get clear out onto the middle of the whole dang field. I thought, oh, it'll keep most of it out. Not even close.
Really?
Snow does shut us down. We've actually had to shovel the whole field a few times to get ready for camps and things like that. So it's caused me to wish that I had a little bit more of an enclosure designed into that. We've looked at how to do it, and it's pretty tricky. It has led us, which speaks to our 10-year vision. We actually are utilizing another space now that we're going to use this winter in the months of December, January, and February. We're going to use this other space that 9 months out of the year is used as a wedding venue. Mm-hmm. We're going to use that for indoor. So we have fully indoor opportunities for fielding, and we're going to make that kind of the home of our high school programs, because I've realized our local high school teams mostly have to practice in a gym, try to set up a makeshift net, and try to do fielding with, whatever. It's not awesome off-season programming for our high school teams. So we're trying to make it so our high school baseball and softball programs can come in and have a space that's all to themselves to really do indoor training. So that'll solve a big niche that we currently can't do with the fielding part of it, like our outdoor space. When it gets below 40 degrees and it's windy, it's pretty rough out there. Some kids, they still trooper it out and go out there, but when there's snow on the ground, you can't do it.
Yeah, I would tell you, if you would have enclosed that, though, I don't think it would have the same feeling as it has now. If you would have made that just a big metal building.
I'm with you.
I think
that's what I keep looking at that. I'm like, I just can't picture it being enclosed. No. It would look way less friendly. Yeah. Or whatever the term,
No, I love to drive by there and see the jitterbugs out there practicing.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? Those little, it's you have to get a big smile on your face. If you drive by there and you see a small softball team, whether it be girls or boys or anybody utilizing that, I mean, that had to be your dream
it's so awesome.
How do we do youth sports and give them more places to practice? Because before that facility, I don't know where they would have went.
Yeah. I'm more excited about our youth stuff that we're doing than anything else. And so this past summer, we run, this is our second year of running the youth, like the coach pitch programs that were like the Knights of Columbus stuff that people start out in. We're now running those through the yard. And so every weeknight during, especially the month of June, is little kids in there playing ball, and parents with their lawn chairs and tents and vehicles backed up all around that field, including out in the alley and everything else, just watching little kids play ball. That is the coolest.
Yeah.
And then like last Sunday was the first Sunday of our fall league that we're doing. So we're doing a fall league for baseball and softball, and so I think it's from kids 9 and up, and it goes all the way through high school. The high schoolers are playing out at Dean Evans. We have some of the kids playing at Bill Burke, which is amazing now that it's all turfed and that the fields are in good shape and ready to go. And then some of the games are being played at the yard. And so I drove by there on Sunday after we were up at Dean for my son Grayton to play. Came down and you drove by Bill Burke, drove by there, and it just makes me happy to see that kind of stuff happening. Totally love that stuff. But yeah, to me the youth programs piece is where it's at. What we're trying to do at the youth level is really facilitate helping kids get off to a really great start fundamentally. So we're spending a lot of our time working with coaches, trying to help the coaches improve, because there's some coaches that have experience, they've been there, and then there's other coaches that literally sort of like, I don't want to say drew the short straw, but you get the idea. Let's say they got voluntold to be the coach,
right?
And they're going, okay, but I don't even know where to start with these kids.
Right.
And so we help them, get off to a great start with what the kids do. We have a partnership with the Royals Amateur Development System so they have resources that we're giving to those coaches. We want to make the coaches better, and then we're offering things to help these kids, like whatever your next step is. So the 7-year-olds, they need to learn how to play machine pitch the next year. But they also need to start learning how to pitch, because they're going to be the pitchers the year after that, or some of them even that next year. So we're working to help them learn how to pitch, learn how to hit off of live pitching, whatever it may be, and offering a lot of camps for that age group. And the goal being that we get back to where the best teams in Salina can stay in Salina on the weeknights and get good games. It gets to where the higher level teams all have to travel. You're going to Kansas City or Oklahoma City or someplace else, Wichita, to play baseball and get a good game. And we're trying to get it back to where the youth league is more relevant, better balanced competition across there. And to me, the kids that will have grown up at the yard getting that kind of coaching and instruction their whole career, I think it's, we're 5 and 10 years away from seeing what that does for the high school sports and beyond. And hopefully, at some point more, big time players come out of Salina, because of this.
Yeah. How can the Community Leader podcast help you? And what I'm thinking of, when you said the scholarships of the brick, what would it take to buy a brick down there if we wanted the viewers, or we cut this up into a little reel that's there? How much does a brick cost down there for a scholarship? What are you selling those for? Is there a number on that, or is it just a donation, or what's the suggested donation?
The suggested donation, I believe, for the smaller bricks is $150. And then we have what would be like a half scholarship, I think is $300. Mm-hmm. And then a full scholarship for a kid is $600. And then there's opportunities to do like a grouping of bricks and do more. So we have some families that have kind of done that, and multiple family members' names, and then maybe put their slogan or something in the middle of the big brick. So we've had a lot of creativity around that, which is pretty cool to see. But the idea, what we're trying to do is help either give kids 1 month, 3 month, or 1 month, 6 month, or a full year is kind of the suggested donations. And then we have other opportunities beyond that, naming the functional spaces. If a family wants to endow an area of the yard, in no way, shape, or form is this about me or Kate when it comes to what we're doing down there. It's like we want to highlight people who are open to to giving and doing good in the community, and maybe want that to be a way they could do good in the community. You know, not everybody has to go as crazy as we did, but maybe you could do something. And that, I think that's probably been one of the coolest things I've experienced about Salina, is there's so many people willing to do something, whatever that level may be. And there's been an amazing number of people that have been willing to do something big.
Right.
But, you know, just being willing to do something.
I think that's the awareness I want to bring is like if you're watching this, it's like if you could give a $150 donation towards like some people don't even know that that's available.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sitting here thinking going, okay, I probably know you could have sponsored a banner. I've seen JRI's banner out there and all that stuff. But I don't even know, where the money was going to. Now that I'm sitting here listening to this going, this is pretty cool. Like the money that's donated is scholarships to allow people to go utilize it. So there could be an underprivileged kid who wants to get into youth sports, but couldn't because their family doesn't have the $150 for 6 months, however long that would get them there. So any donation that would be sent there, it doesn't even have to be for the brick or the recognition. Just know that all the donation that you would send in would help go to a scholarship for a child who doesn't have the wherewithal, maybe the family doesn't, to experience the yard for 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely, 100%. And, you know, like, so, for instance, Salina Homes has a banner out there on our 4th Street fence. You know, that's a separate deal from the bricks. So we utilize the banners on the fence, like the outfield sponsors, to help, you know, lower the cost of just the operations of running that place. You know, everything has gotten more expensive. You know, the electrical bill, all that stuff. It's just kind of nutso to see how much more some of that cost than what we had expected it to cost when we did all the projections. So the companies that support us, that's huge because it helps us not have to keep upping the rates for members. But then, you know, the bricks is a separate deal because it really is creating an endowment. We're building a fund that is specific to scholarships and we use that to bring better coaching to Salina. So we've brought in some major league coaches. We've brought in, you know, we've been able to invest in some technology that is stuff that, you know, brings kind of big city stuff to Salina. So that's been really cool to be able to do. And, you know, that helps us a ton. And that's really, so it's kind of two separate avenues. We have companies that are helping us to just, you know, use the yard as a way to promote their business, but helps us lower our cost of operations. And then the endowment piece that hopefully becomes this long-standing thing that continues to just give over and over again to help whatever needs are at the yard. So,
Cool. Well, before we leave, we've got to talk about our sponsor. We were supposed to do this at the beginning. So you mentioned JRI. They're a big sponsor of the yard. And JRI owns Mocha's as well as Freddy's, and they are our Mocha's Minutes. Yes. And what did you say you get from there?
Oh, man.
You're a frequent flyer of Mocha's.
A frequent flyer. My whole family, we are very frequent. And so...
what's your favorite drink there?
I love to go in the mornings. I like the black coffee, whatever their flavored brew of the day. I almost always get that, but my particular favorite is the Highlander grog. So I just have them put it right in my own cup.
Highlander grog.
Yeah. And then, Kate loves the mocha. She gets almost everything now with like oat milk or coconut milk. I mean, we're getting really fancy. The nitro in the afternoons, if I'm long day at the office, I might go by and get a nitro cold brew. It's all, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Nice.
Oh man. So yeah, their food is amazing too. I love Mocha's.
Yeah. It's great to have it here.
That's such a cool restaurant. I love how they built that building out. We were going there back when it was the old Taco Tico building.
Right.
You know, not nearly as snazzy as now. Now it's like, wow, this is like big city stuff.
Yeah, big city. Well, even with everything you've done. So anyway, we spent our 54 minutes together.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being in the community, seeing how far you and Kate have come. I hope Kate isn't upset I didn't have her on here. I could have a third chair, but you know what? Maybe she'll watch it.
Yeah,
and then she'll know. But anyway, what you guys have not only built to watch your family, to watch And if anything I've pulled away from this, and I hope the viewers do, is how much the youth mean to you.
Yeah.
Youth sports in particular, and trying to provide the best youth sports for the city of Salina. And you literally have taken all of your success you've gotten from the community and repurposed that and repositioned it back in the community. And I wanted to recognize you on the Community Leader podcast for doing that, as well as been a great friend for years.
Yes.
I admire what you've done. You've built a phenomenal business. But not only have you built a phenomenal business, but you've put the money back in the community that made you and Kate as successful that you are. So I wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Well, thank you.
Matthew, will you bring in do we have a T-shirt that we can give him on there? What do you? What are you, medium?
Let's go large.
Large?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like them particularly tight.
Do we have any larges left? We have some. Okay,
Oh, man.
cool.
Yes.
This is it. This is the official Community Leader T-shirt.
Love it.
So only people wear those in the community who have been on the podcast.
On the podcast. I love
And
it.
so wear that with pride.
I will.
And wear
Absolutely.
that
Thank
around
you,
there. That's
Todd.
like a little badge of honor.
Thank you
For what you've done in the community. So appreciate
Yeah,
you, buddy.
man. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for all the stuff you guys have been doing too,
Yep.
man. It's awesome.
It's good.
Really cool.
Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.